Welcome back to another episode of Boomer Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry. Today, doing a draft recap, NFC South. Okay, draft is finally over. Going to break this down. Just want a reminder that there won't be any grades. I don't like giving grades out when people haven't played. Also, on top of that, I'm going to be doing my best job to be unbiased and really talk more about the players and their fit. Because, you know, when you talk about grades, it's more about who I like and how many players did you get that I like. And I don't want to slip into that. It's hard to get around, but I'm going to do my best. So, anyway, let's, kick this off with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Atlanta Falcons, of course, got close to the Super Bowl not too long ago. Really will have a stacked roster. Number one, you get Calvin Ridley, the best receiver in the draft, some would say. And I'm not opposed to agreeing with you. Calvin Ridley, even though he didn't put up the testing numbers that made people feel like he's a top 15 pick or anything, Calvin Ridley definitely demonstrated on tape that he has all the qualities to be a high-level receiver. And so you're talking about the best route running. You're talking about some really good deep speed, but I think his route running was key. Now, it's funny he goes to the Falcons because that's the exact comparison of why he didn't get drafted high is right across from him, and that's Julio Jones, where you see a dominant trait type number one receiver, and people didn't see that in Calvin. And so they thought he'd be more of a number two. Well, now he gets to be the ultimate number two to one of the ultimate number ones. And that's former team, or not teammate, but former Alabama star Julio Jones. So people are buzzing about it. And I said this before, that when you're a team that gets deep in the playoffs, or that you get close to a Super Bowl, you got a good roster, you can afford to just build on your strength and not really have to keep reaching for all these needs. You can continue to build the things you're strong at and say, hey, this is what we're good at and this is what we're going to work with. So, really excited to see, what Calvin Ridley does next to, Julio, but also with Matt Ryan, a quarterback that give him the ball, unlike he had with Hurst last year. Then you get Isaiah Oliver, a corner that I really am excited about. I think, he doesn't have the ceiling everybody else does, but again, a two-sport athlete. He's the decathlete in track and field, so just tremendous amount of body control, tremendous amount of athletic traits that can only help you at being a corner. He doesn't have the burner speed to recover, but I still think with his frame and with the amount of speed he does have, he can give you something in man and zone. And the Falcons do like a lot of cover three and whatnot, kind of the Seahawks system. So I really like him. I think you get him off the ball like Richard Sherman, and he can make plays. But if you put him up on somebody, I think you'll be able to teach him how to press. Then third round, you get another one of my guys, and I wouldn't say he's my guy because I watched him the day before the draft when I watched all the last minute guys, and he stood out. He's stout. He's one of those stout, I hate to say this. He reminds me of me. One of those stout, really strong, naturally strong defensive tackles, but has, natural athleticism. He's just quick for his size, and he plays really hard. So I really like that. I don't know if Ontario Poe is coming back or not, but you're talking about Grady Jarrett. He reminds me of him slightly. He doesn't have the necessary pass rush that Jarrett has. Or is it Jarrett Great? Whatever. He doesn't have the same pass rush he has, but reminds me of him. And I think, even if Poe is coming back, this is a great guy to put in a rotation, a hard worker at a smaller school that, really has some dog in him. Then you get Ito Smith, running back out of Southern Miss. I saw him at in the Senior Bowls when I saw him. And you got Dante Freeman, you got Tevin Coleman. It's always interesting when you pick a back, especially a fourth round pick. So you always feel like, between those two running backs, one of them's going to end up going to greener pastures. And I might be tripping. Tevin Coleman might have left already. I don't know, but, picking up Ito Smith, I think, he definitely works for that, stretch zone scheme that you're going to be using. So decent pickup there. Russell Gage, not one that I'm familiar with out of LSU. LSU had a tough time overall this year, again, with the quarterback situation. So, hard to gauge those guys. And then, Foy, I can't even pronounce that dude's name, out of Yale. I believe he was also at the Senior Bowl. If not, he was at the Shrine Bowl. Not a guy I'm familiar with, but, yeah. So overall, you get a good draft though. I look at, the Atlanta Falcons, and again, I see you adding strength to the strength you already got. I think Austin Hooper has showed that he could be decent. But I didn't think the Falcons have really solved that tight end problem that they've always been having. And I thought they would go for somebody this draft, but it was interesting to see them not. But overall, you talk about the first 3 picks alone. Not super familiar with the last 3 picks, but, the first 3 picks alone, you're talking about guys that can, really come in and be quality starters, if not give you quality reps. So we'll see what they do with Trufant, hopefully healthy. And you like oh man, I'm blanking on his name. Not Collins. Collins is not good at corner. It's the other guy from the small school, Robert Alford. So you like them, and you interested to see what Oliver does, but I think it's always good to bring in that competition. And with the roster the Falcons have, they definitely have the luxury of bringing in extra competition at spots they already pretty good at. So then we go over to hold on one second. Sorry about this. Whatever. We're going to skip them. New Orleans Saints. The other team was not loading. So we're going to go to the Saints. So the Saints, the biggest thing is the trade up. Everybody wants to talk about the trade up. Now this is my thing. And I think a lot of people a lot of people have disagreed with me, but I feel like the Saints, with Drew Brees and in win now mode, you're not always, but with Drew Brees, you're pretty much going to be picking late. And so while you give up a first round pick to move up, it's not as super steep because it's not like you're giving up a top 10 pick. And that's the thing. So people just, automatically assign value to picks. And then they quote the chart, which I don't use the chart, but it's just contradictory. People will be like, oh, you can't give up a first round pick. But then other trades, they'll be like, well, the chart says a pick from number 1 to this is worth this. Okay, well then you have to use that same logic that the pick at 29 or, 28 is not, super valuable as a top 5 pick. And if you think you're going to be a playoff team as the Saints got close to the, Super Bowl, then your first round pick isn't as valuable as other people are saying. It's when you lose that it hurts, like the Texans. Texans traded up to get Deshaun Watson, and they felt like, okay, we're going to be good, so we can give that up, but then they end up being terrible, and their pick was top 5 pick. And now it really hurts that you missed out on the top 5 pick. So that's my thinking. I think the Saints understand that they're a playoff team. They can give up that pick for next year and move up to get somebody that they feel they really enjoy. Now, let's talk about the player. Marcus Davenport is he's a project, but a project with a very high ceiling. I mean, you're talking about height, weight, speed that is I wouldn't say off the charts like we never seen, but it's comparable to guys that we felt would be really strong, like what's his name? Myles Garrett. Sorry. Also like a Clowney. Now I'm not saying he's those guys, but those are the traits that people look for. The only thing is Davenport didn't go against the same competition those guys did. And so there's the question about that. And Marcus Davenport is a little late to football. He isn't a football player, as they say. And he's not in love with the game. And so you question about how much work he's going to put in to actually get better. But, again, with these teams, they get to see the parts we don't. They get to talk to these kids and they got to feel comfortable with what they see. So you got to trust that they feel comfortable with him as a person and that they believe they can bring him in and really coach him up. Now, he was a stand-up DN. People, it's It's different, man. I tell you, when you look at schemes, it's tough for a casual fan, but when you look at schemes, you got to understand what the whole scheme is. Just because he was standing up, he wasn't an outside linebacker. He was just a stand-up DN. He still had the same responsibilities. They probably just felt that he rushed better standing up, or he felt more comfortable. And so moving to a true outside linebacker is going to be difficult. Now, they could use him as a 5-tech, I hate that. I hate misquoting that. It's a 4-tech. It's not a 5-tech. I hate when people say that. It's a 4-tech. Now, that's what Cam Jordan plays, so they could probably believe they could wreak havoc one-on-one on the inside. I don't know. I think with his natural size and get off, he could really devastate people off the snap, but it'd be interesting to waste his talent on the inside. And Cam Jordan, I think he built like a tweener where you felt like, yeah, he definitely had to play on the inside. Now, to this point, he's got a lot of bend, and so he's gotten better. But Marcus Davenport, you feel like has some natural bend around the edge, and so would you use him as a stand-up rush backer? And so that's the question. That's the question that they're going to have to answer. But either way, they feel like putting him with Cam Jordan and putting him in a situation where you won't see a lot of double teams, he'll be a lot better. But anyway, let's move on. So then third round, you get Traquan Smith. And Traquan is one of the receivers I like. Michael Gallup, Traquan Smith, EQ St. Brown, Anthony Miller, and Calvin Ridley were all the guys I really like. I thought Traquan was a big sleeper. And it's funny, I did a mock draft game, and I had 3 teams, mainly the Bears, my team, but I also had the Saints. And I didn't get Traquan Smith. I got him for the Bears. But I did get Anthony Miller for the Saints, who the Bears actually drafted. So, pretty funny, but I think Traquan is underrated. I think he gives you a little bit of everything. And I think he showed at the Senior Bowl that he could really be a safety valve, possession type receiver. And so, pretty much, I think, why am I blanking on everybody's name today? I'm sorry, but the receiver for the Saints, from Ohio State, I can't remember his name right now. But I think he is more of a possession guy, but he can go down the field and win 50-50 passes for you. And so while Traquan isn't going to be like a straight burner to like open him up, I think Traquan is also going to be a nice outlet as well that Drew Brees will have. And you really got to start giving some weapons and options opposite just your one receiver. So I think Traquan's a big pickup. Rick Leonard, more of a project at offensive tackle, but you've seen projects go to the Saints on the O-line and really end up coming out well. Aaron Cromer, I don't believe he's there. I know he's with the Bears. I don't remember where he is now, but he was more of the reason that the O-line projects were able to work out. And you saw them go with a more refined prospect and Ramczyk last year. So Rick Leonard should be interesting though to see how they mold him. Natrell Jameson in the 5th. Not a bad flyer for a 5th round pick. Not super intimate on him, but him and Nick Nelson, people thought had a lot of hype coming in to the draft and that they might go higher than expected. This is around where people expected. But the Saints really like to be flexible with that defense in the secondary, especially because you lose Kenny Vaccaro. But also having Lattimore be a lockdown corner really helps you be more flexible. And so I love to see what Jameson plugs in. And then speaking of that secondary, you get Cameron Moore in the 6th round. Also not a guy I'm super familiar with. But then you get the 6th round pick, Boston Scott, running back out of Louisiana Tech. And it's interesting how many teams pick up a running back that already have running backs, but I guess you can never have too much competition, and not to mention special teams and all that. But then Will Clapp, I think, is the biggest one, because Will Clapp, a lot of people thought would be a really strong midday pick had he stayed in school and got a little better, but he ended up coming out early, and a lot of people thought that was a mistake, and we see he fell to the 7th round because he just wasn't ready. But now you get to the Saints again that has a history of really helping out that O-line. then you can start talking about maybe seeing him reach his potential. However, you look at this draft and you wonder where's the tight end. You wonder where's the quarterback. And it's funny, people were talking about the Saints trading for a quarterback, trading up. I always said, I don't think you give up capital to get a future replacement when you're in win now mode. But later in the draft, there were guys available that you could have got to tutelage under, or to tutor under, Breeze's tutelage. But you look at what happened with Grayson, and people might think that, okay, well, mid-round quarterbacks just isn't the thing for us. We're going to wait until Breeze is gone and we'll have to go for a high-level quarterback. But tight end, there was a lot there. Interesting to see them not reach for it. For me, with the Saints, I end up getting our mock draft game is different because, you know, people value differently than the NFL does. But I got Ian Thomas. I got Anthony Miller. I got Mason Rudolph. I got Lorenzo Carter. It was, you know, I thought I had a pretty good draft, to be honest with you. But looking at the Saints' actual draft, some interesting picks, all over the board, but well balanced. But everything's going to ride on Marcus Davenport and seeing what they do with him. The rest of these guys, except for maybe Traquan, I think the rest of these guys are just developmental, pieces to add to the roster. So then we're going to go to the Carolina Panthers, finally loaded. And we got DJ Moore, number 1. DJ Moore, who ends up being the first receiver taken. I don't think he was better than Calvin Ridley. I talked about him a lot. The thing with him is just, I think he's a slot and not like a guy that can do both. I think on the outside, he was really covered up in college. And a lot of people talk about the quarterback play, but as I said many times, before the ball was even thrown, he was covered. And so in the slot in space, I think he did a lot better. They forced the ball to him a lot, so that inflated his numbers. We'll see what he does, because you got Ted Ginn, I believe. Again, I don't know everybody's situation, but of course your number 1 target right now is Funchess, a bigger guy, more of a 50-50 ball guy. But if they mistakenly think they're going to put DJ Moore on the outside, it might be a long time, or a rough time with him. I think you have to put him in the slot to keep him effective. Dante Jackson went a lot higher than I thought he would go. I know the measurables were going to be tempting, but I still thought just, you know, his lack of experience and the whole LSU as a whole just was not on par this year. I thought he would drop a little bit, and he still goes in the second round. That's a slot corner. That's a nickel corner all day. With that type of speed, you could probably test him outside, but I still think that's his best bet is using his short area quickness and long speed to play in the nickel. And I think that's a big thing because the Panthers haven't historically used high round premium picks on secondary. So I think that's a nice pickup, to be honest with you. Interested to see if they try to put him on the outside. Then you got Rashawn Golden, a safety that went a lot higher than I expected. Not one I was super familiar with, but as we've seen in the past that Carolina will take swings with safeties that they believe in. So not mad at that pick. You get Ian Thomas. Again, I mentioned I got him in the mock draft for the Saints. I thought he was going to go second or third round. He went at the top of the 4th. I really thought he was a receiving type tight end that the NFL loves right now. And he can block a little bit, but you don't really need him to. And with Greg Olsen kind of progressing, with Ed Dixon, maybe having a decent year last year, I think Ian Thomas is going to be ripe to take that spot over later. Marquise Haynes out of Mississippi. You know what? Most of the Mississippi guys are projects, man, on that front. And they played them all over the place a lot. And so that's the thing is, Mississippi, it felt like they had a lot of, tweeners. And so it was interesting to see where like Speaks and Haynes and everybody was going to end up. And I think they're going to, definitely try to use Haynes as a hand in the dirt, DN, try to get him off the edge. But I think you got some refinement to do with him. Then you go two inside linebackers, Jermaine Carter, who I never even heard of, to be honest with you, and then Andre Smith from North Carolina. Interesting. I mean, Thomas Davis is getting up there, but is he still on? I believe he's still on the team. I'm bad at following free agency. But he's getting up there, but either way, you got Kuechly and you got Shaq Thompson. And honestly, with the NFL today, where you usually got, two linebackers, even though Shaq plays a lot of coverage out in the, nickel, so you can keep three linebackers on the field, but really you only need two. And so it's interesting to see them get two linebackers when you got two really strong starters. So, I'd be curious to, what their plans are for that. And then Kendrick Norton out of Miami, going 7th round was a little shocking. He's a project, but he's a guy that I thought they might bet on, with the Miami, guys all being pretty athletic, to be honest with you, and a lot of size too. So that's a guy that I think, putting in that rotation. I know you got a lot. I mean, a lot of guys in that rotation. You lose Star, but you have K'Wan Short and then your pick from last year. So Norton, I think, fits well in that rotation where he doesn't have to be immediate impact player. But going with Ron Rivera, I think that's a good place for him to really unlock his potential. So I like that pick, to be honest with you. The two inside linebackers, I'm a little more stuck on. That's interesting. And then this is a good tackle class up top, but it's interesting to see them not go for a tackle or even take a flyer on a guy like Crosby, who ended up falling to the 5th round. So, the Panthers is interesting. It's interesting. I mean, because we've been talking about the O-line forever with the Panthers, and for them to not really address it here, we'll kind of see what the answer is going to be. I would have thought that had been a really high need for them to go after, but we see they had other thoughts. Then lastly, we're going to go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 1, we got Vita Vea. Oh man, I'm looking at some of these drafts together for the first time. You've been watching pick by pick, but it's nice to see them all together. So Vita Vea was shocking. I mean, you talk about them trading back when Derwin James was on the board, and then Derwin James being on board and passing him up for Vita Vea because a lot of people connected Derwin James to this team. Now, was that their number one need? Probably not, but a lot of people felt like Derwin James just had his name connected to the Bucs. And maybe it's a Florida connection, or maybe it was misinformation, but it was nice because the Buccaneers got a guy that they really wanted. Now, you saw the Bucs kind of take some swings and do some moves for the D-line over the offseason, so it was interesting to see Vita Vea. But you can't help but think what can happen when you bring in Vita Vea to eat up double teams, not only to open up the linebackers to flow more, but you're talking about Gerald McCoy really being one-on-one. So Vita Vea, a lot of people automatically thought that you would have some type of odd front where he can play that just nose sit in the middle and 2 gap. So it's interesting you got an attack in cover 2-4-3. Where he can do a little more than just sit there on double teams. He can, he's going to affect the run either way, but, he's going to affect the run, but also get into the gaps on some of the, passing down. So interesting how they'll see him. I mean, number 12 pick, you got to think they keep him on the field 3 downs, but, I'm interested. So Doug Martin's gone. Ronald Jones comes in. Ronald Jones, who people believe his 40 was more due to an injury, and it must have been because he still went pretty high, and a guy that I really like. Some people were scared by the 40 time, but Ronald Jones reminds me of Tevin Coleman, upright, slasher, and really good out of the backfield. So I think you get a big upgrade at running back. And this is why I don't reach from running back. I mean, there's guys going to be there throughout the time. So Ronald Jones, I think immediately steps in and brings an upgrade to that running game, especially a line that's been built pretty, decently so far. So then we look at MJ Stewart, a surprise, I would say. Him going that high was a surprise. I know a lot of people like MJ Stewart. A lot of people think he's going to be a nickel corner, and I think that is what he's going to end up doing. But he's pretty physical, so if you want to have those press corners, I think MJ Stewart could get reps outside, but I think immediately he comes in and gives you help at the nickel. Now, Carlton Davis, that's one of my favorite corners. So they double up with physical corners, and they bring him in, and you gotta love it. I mean, he's long, and he's the only corner you saw press in college. Maybe the only one in the whole NCAA, cause, they just don't do it in college, but in the NFL they do. They press and jam, and he's got long arms, he's got strong arms, and I think Carlton going to this system fits so well where he's going to be able to beat receivers up off the line and stick with them down the field as you get that D-line built up and continue to get after the passers. So I really like that pick. Kappa moving to guard. He's got a lot to prove, but Tampa has shown they're not scared to take small school guys. Kappa, while his tape looked really good, it was against really small competition, held up well in the Senior Bowl. So I'm excited to see him and get a chance to get in there on that O-line and compete. I don't know if he has the strength to drive block people. So I'll be interested to see how fast he can get on the field. But I think that's a nice project for you to build up in the third round. Jordan Whitehead's interesting in the fourth round, man. A lot of the safeties that went are interesting. He played running back and safety if you didn't watch him at Pitt. And he's cool as a back and he's cool as a safety. Definitely the short area explosiveness, definitely the short area quickness, but people don't know how good of a safety he actually can be. Didn't have a lot of tape this year battling with injury, so I didn't get to see him a lot, but he is, I knew him because he was a two-position player. So it'll be interesting, kind of how they develop him at that safety position. But I definitely think he has some technique to learn. Justin Watson, receiver out of Pennsylvania, really small school kid, really small prospect, but got a little bit of notice in the off season. I think you taking more of a flyer with him, at the fifth round to kind of see how he works out. But Jack Sitchie, who had injuries this year real bad and didn't really get to play, but, last year really had a lot of people turning heads to see him. Played outside in Wisconsin and did a lot on the edge. Of course, going to be more of an inside backer in this scheme. But in the sixth round, I think that's a good flyer because he's a worker bee. He works hard and he attacks. And so I think that you bring him in here and you really get a guy that might be physically limited, but is really going to be a dog as a Mike backer for you. So looking at overall Tampa Bay, I really like what they did. I mean, you get some premium names. MJ Stewart might have been a little high for me, but Carlton Davis as well. That kind of helps out. I really like the first 5 picks of this draft. Really excited about what they're going to do, as far as getting on the field, and, those corners got a real chance to start immediately. So really excited for what the Bucs did. But anyway, so that is the NFC South. We'd love to hear what you think about your team's draft. Go down to the comment section. Let me know. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it around, and thank you for listening.